So here is the fourth fish rack that I've put together. It is 9 10-gallon tanks. And in this video, you're going to see how I designed it, built it, put it all together, and how I do my auto water change system to it, emergency overflows, pond liners wrapped around so if the tank ever goes, it's all going to be caught and nothing's going to hit the ground. So if this interests you, come take a look and follow along. So before you build your rack, you want to figure out what space you have for your ceiling, how many tanks you can go, far as width and height. So we want to plan all that out first. And this is the point of this part of the video. So we're going to do a 10-gallon tank rack. We're going to have 3 from left to right, and then we're going to have 3 rows. The most amount of space I had from floor to ceiling was 77.5 inches. So that's what I had to work with. With the 10-gallon tanks, this is what I wanted. I didn't want to go as bigger tanks as some of my other racks. I want to use this for breeding smaller fish, raising up some fry. And as you'll see through the video with my auto water change system, what I found is you really don't need 20-gallon tanks. You can do a lot smaller, like 10-gallon tanks, and still have great water quality because it's changing water so often. So if you're getting low on space, like my fish room is, I was able to squeeze in this rack and use smaller tanks but still maintain good water quality. So first thing we want to do is figure out the sizes of your tanks. So that's the measurements for each tank, and like I said, that's our ceiling height, so we determine how many rows we have. I was also very limited on space. I could go a little more than 36 inches in the length of it, far as left to right. But with the tank measurements I had here, and then giving around half an inch, some of them are more closer to like 3/4 and more spacing between the tanks, everything worked out really well. So we got all our measurements here, figuring out, making sure we have clearance from the ceiling to the tank, and then the height of our tanks, width of our boards, and then the spacing for the next rows is all the same. And then we also had what space we had down below for storage. Or in this case, I have my drain piping that is connecting all these tanks that you'll see later on. So I had to make sure that when they're connecting to the bulkheads at the top here and the lines coming down, that the ABS piping that's here, I'd have enough clearance going down to my drain to have proper slope. So once you figure that all out, then you start figuring out, okay, well, what height of the boards you need for your uprights, right? Your beams left to right. And then your front to back, which is going to be from here to the back, so connecting into a square. And then we also had to do some light supports, which also go from front to back in the center there, which you'll see later on. And then I choose to do a rack where I have beam supports, right? That's that bottom measurement here. So that is this one right here. So it's basically just a 2x4 that's bracing this frame front to back, just to give extra strength. There's other ways to do it. Some people have taken it where they've taken their uprights and notched it out so that this beam actually sits into here. I didn't feel that I needed that extra support, being 10-gallon tanks, and it was just a little bit easier to work with for what I had to do and how I wanted to do it. But definitely the other way is a little more better if you're doing a very longer rack and you're using tanks that are going to hold more water, so more weight. So that's basically how you figure it out. Now, I didn't show me building the rack just because of time restraints. I wasn't able to do it all kind of in one sitting. It all was done in stages. But the main thing is you really want to cut all your boards right away and try to really assemble the first day, because you will start to get some warping, especially with your frames and your uprights as well. And then really from there, you can just go ahead and paint it. I choose not to paint this rack, which again, you'll see later on. And then, yeah, so we'll go down to the next stage and you'll see it's starting to be assembled as far as the drain piping and the pond liner that I've done, and explaining why I've done all these steps. All right, so we got the rack all assembled here. pretty simple, like I was saying in the drawings. Just going to give you a close-up so you can see how some of the things joined together and how it turned out. Then we got our blocks on here, just give it some extra support. It's only going to be around 300 pounds per shelf, being 3 10-gallon tanks, but just to be safe, put on the extra block. So that's what we got so far. I've already put one tank in just to see how it all fits in there and how our spacing is, if we still got about the 5 inches that we wanted. So the other thing that I always do is I put in some of this sill gasket that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. I just used to give a little bit of cushioning because not all the time are all the joints going to be perfectly level. You're going to get times where you're going to get a bit of a difference. So just give it a little bit of a buffer. Alright, so I got the pond liner up and I got some tanks that I've drilled. So what the point of this pond liner is, I don't have any floor drains in my fish room. So what I've done with all my racks is have some sort of layer of protection. So this pond liner, what it's going to do is the fittings for the tanks are in front of it. So if the fittings ever leak, the bulkheads ever leak, or anything like that, then what's going to happen is the water is going to run down on the inside of the pond liner from one level to the other. Some of the water is going to go into one tank in the middle row and go down the drain. And then if there's a problem in the middle row, the water is going to overflow to the bottom. And then from there, if there's any problems with this drain or the 2-inch piping that we have here, then that's going to get caught in this pocket I have here that's recessed into the stand. And then I'm going to have the 1.5-inch bulkhead. It's going to have a screen over top. And then it's going to connect right to this liner here, and it's going to have its own pipe underneath the liner going to its own 1.5-inch drain line to connect to my main drain. So the main drain is pretty simple. It's just all 2-inch piping with 2-inch T's that are actually 2.5-inch T's on the top here. And then all the fittings that are on the back of the tanks come off with the threaded 90 off the back of the all threaded bulkheads to a barb fitting with a little bit of black hose depending on where they're positioned. Obviously the middle and the top row will have longer pieces of pipe. What I end up doing to get this piping on the back side of the rack, so it's on the outside of the 2x4s. Okay. What I did was I did some strapping that's nylon coated so it won't rust. So it wraps around the pipe and then it's screwed onto the back of the stand, but the pond liner's in behind that. So if there's any issues here, it's going to stay with inside. And then, like I said, it's going to come down to the bottom row and catch from the 1.5-inch overflow at the bulkhead if needed. And then this slope here is about just under a 1-inch slope. Okay, so we're in behind the stand here. So you can see the pond liner from the back side. So right here we have the elbow, the 1.5-inch elbow that's coming through the pond liner. And I'll be putting some silicone around that just to make sure it's nice and sealed. And then we have the 2-inch pipe that is connecting to that elbow. And then we can see our 1.5-inch corrugated drain hose. And I got a bracket to the stand there that's going to connect to that overflow bulkhead on the bottom. Alright, so we got the bulkhead installed there and the screen on it, and we did some leak testing. No issues at the liner, no issues at the threaded elbow below the bulkhead or any of the other connections. Everything worked really good. I actually ran a lot of water through it, and I could probably have a whole 15-gallon tank pretty well break and still not have any issues with it coming up near the front. It handled a fair bit of water coming out of the hose, so I was quite happy about that. Definitely gives me some security, so I don't have to worry about anything. So the other thing that I have done is I have started to install my lights. So the ones I run, these are LEDs. These are what they call the T5 LEDs. You can get them from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description below. If I can get it done, I'll try and get it on the card up in the corner there. But yeah, these things are great. They're not very expensive. I got, what was it, a pack of 6? No, it's a pack of 8 for a really good price. And it's nice because they're all linkable. So they come with some of the connection wires. Not all of them you need for every single light. And it also comes with the power cords, which are fairly long. Just got it wrapped around the stand right now until I get it connected to the electrical. And then the other nice thing about these things, let's get this unwrapped here, is we have switches for the lights. So depending on where you have it located, what I do is I usually run generally just the one cord, and then I'll connect them all together. Depending, with this being a 3-level rack, I'll probably gonna have to run at least two power supplies, but we'll see. So they're pretty easy. There's just one screw on each bracket, and then just click in there. You can slide them a bit, and yeah. So probably gonna run 2, maybe 3 per row, and then we'll see. So I'm gonna get these installed, and then you can see what it looks like later on in the video. So you can see we got some tanks filled up with water here. I moved my Neolamprologus brevis into this tank. And the point of this section of the video is just to show that I did end up going to 2 of the T5 LED lights. As you can see, it's quite bright and very clear. I'm definitely going to leave it with this for the middle and the bottom row. I'm going to run the 2 of the T5s. Definitely going to run some plants, mostly low light stuff, guppy grass, Christmas moss, Java moss, some water spray, Ceratopterus. And yeah, works quite well. It looks really nice. It's very crisp and clean. It's 65,000 Kelvin. So these 2-foot LEDs are 1001 lumens. On the front of the rack, what I do is I put this Sintra. You can get this at like sign places and stuff like this. It's just basically a sheet of PVC plastic. And what that does is, so the liner that is wrapping around the bottom of the tanks just comes up. Just to give me that about a 1-inch lip. It's just basically just above the bottom trim of the tanks. And then I use this Sintra material just to hold it up and just to make it look nice and clean. And then the bottom here we have some pond liner that we use to lift up for storage. We've done the same thing for the front of the tank, so I had some pond liner left over, so I use that to look inside. That way, always you're walking up, you're not getting glared by the light. Okay, so we got our side panels of our pond liner in. As you can see, I just used some tape just to join it to the panel that was on the back side that wrapped around to the side there a little bit. The side panel is screwed down to the 2x4 frame. And this is the liner that is wrapping around the bottom row of tanks. And then the panels insert inside. Done the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I got my 1-inch PVC pipe here. And then what I'm going to be doing is finishing installing the valves. I've done them all. You can see one here installed. This one here has already been pre-drilled, and then using the pipe tap to put on the threads. So we're going to do this next so you can see the whole process. So the drill bit that I use to pre-drill is a 9 30 drill bit. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So when you're pre-drilling, if you're using a bigger bit like I do, then you want to make sure you go slow at first so you don't skip and get it all messed up there, or you want to get a really good hole started. Now, some people use 2 different size drill bits. Okay, so now we got our pipe tap. So that's the size that I use for these blue plastic valves, is what I use. I use this for all my water lines, which is what this is going to be for. Also for my air valves. I get these from Aquatic. Well, it used to be called Aquatic Ecosystem, but now it's Pentair Aquatics, I believe, out in Florida. They're fairly cheap. I got 50 of them delivered to my door here in Canada for about $75 Canadian after being converted from US funds. So $75 Canadian for 50 of these valves. You can use them for water and you can use them for air because they have a gasket to it. So that way you have no issues. One of the reasons I use them is I never have to worry about them rusting, corroding, getting stiff, nothing. I've been using them for over 2 years here in my fish room, and my place of work we've been using them for well over 10 years for air purposes, and water ones I think I've been using for about 5 or 6 now. So never any issues. Definitely recommend these over any other valves. So once you feel it start digging in and it drops down, you don't want to go too far deep. These bits are tapered. The one I have in particular is not too bad, but I've had other ones where if you go too much, then you're just really widening your thread, your hole as it's being thread, and you can find that your valve can be a little bit loose. You can compensate with more Teflon, but especially for a water pipe, if you're using standard City PSI or higher, you don't want to have any issues. So I just put it in reverse and back it out. So we just clean off the hole here. Make sure you got your valve well taped. Generally just about 3 passes. I do 4 just to give it a little bit extra security. Make sure you start it off nice and straight. And just thread them all the way down. Generally, I try and go as deep as I can. And that's it. Then we're just going to, once we finish getting this one on for the one we just drilled, and then the one we did before that, just going to shake all the shavings that were left in here and go ahead and put this up. So we got our white PVC pipe in. So that's for our water supply for auto water change. So I got it all on there. Got the cap on the end of the pipe at the very end there. And then all the valves you saw me install, they're all in there now. The black pipe in behind is for my air system. Yes, it's ABS. Just with the air pump that I have, it's a very large air pump. It's actually a diaphragm air pump. I still haven't switched over to a piston style one yet, but I will be. Again, it's something that I had, the piping. I know long term, there is going to be issues, but place of work, we've had that system there with the ABS for over 12 years and no issues. So I just carried on with the ABS I already had for now. And then eventually when I do get a piston style pump or I'm ready to change it over to the ABS for the air, I'll be doing that. But for now, so we got the nylon coated strapping to secure everything in place, front and the back there, keep these two. And then for our water supply, so I got to shut off here if I need to. And then what I've done is I've ran and connected just to some irrigation tubing. Got a secondary shut off just in case. It would have been just too hard to run a solid pipe from the manifold of the auto water exchange system up across the ceiling and all the turns and everything to this. So originally, when I first set up my racks, I was using this tubing. I was just finding it was just a bit of pain and adding on, so that's why I went to a manifold system. It's just for this rack, it was just much easier to connect it with the irrigation tubing to the rack, the manifold I have going to the tanks, and then from the main system itself. So this one here, this is zone 3. So this is the one that feeds the new rack of 10 gallons. I have done a video before of my auto water change system. But basically the main thing is you always got to make sure if you are needing to reduce your pressure like I have to, especially using the irrigation tubing, it can handle the pressure, but when you run the manifolds with the blue valves, you definitely need to turn it down. I have really good pressure here. It's well over 35 psi. But you got to make sure that if you're going to want to restrict it, always restrict it before the solenoid. All right. So yeah, we got our valve here, just turning it back. You can see it's almost barely open. I have more than enough pressure. And then we got our solenoid, and got our connectors, and then our irrigation tubing running up to that manifold on the 10-gallon tanks. So this tank here is no longer filled with water, and it's a prime example of why I do the way I do my racks, with having the palm liner wrapping around the tanks, and then going to the bottom with the palm liner underneath the bottom row of tanks, and then connecting it all, and then having my overflow on the bottom, so if any water goes, the tank breaks, tank leaks, or anything like that, again, it just catches down, funnels down to the bottom. The drain on the bottom, underneath the bottom row of tanks, catches it, goes down to the floor drain, everything's good. So this tank here, I decided to drill it on the bottom of the tank, and I was just topping it up and had water in for a good 5-6 days. I just noticed a little low, so I thought maybe just the water had leaked between the fitting and the pipe. And I was just topping it up, and all of a sudden I started noticing water running down below, down to the next tank here. And I looked closer, and you can see how it, unfortunately, well, it may not show up too well on the camera here, but you can definitely see it in person. And unfortunately, with the extra pressure, it just caused the whole back panel to crack and just spiderweb. But yeah, the water was running down, no problems. It caught it all, didn't have any issues at all. So this is why I do it again, and yeah, you never know. It's just Murphy's Law. Something can happen. This way I didn't have to spend time today, get my shop vac out. All got caught. Everything was good. So I hope you all enjoyed this video on how I built this rack for my 10-gallon tanks. And I appreciate all my subscribers. Last time I checked, it was like 175. Thank you very much. Thank you for all of you that have hung in there. I haven't done videos for like a few months or more now, so I'm sorry. As you can see, I've been very busy with this build, work, and a bunch of other things in life. But now that this rack is all done, I moved some more fish in today. I just got a few more fish to move in today. And then I'm pretty well done this. And then I got some really cool projects coming up. If you are a guppy breeder like me, and you know what it's like when you do have to colony breed and you have all these different sizes of fish and it just takes you forever to sort, I got something for you. You guys are going to like it. So thanks again. I just thought I'd end the video with my Julia Chromis Mark Smith eye. I got some babies in here that are almost ready for sale, along with the pair. And thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye.